fire. Did you hear about this?
Yes, Greg, we are live. There was a fire.
No, don't put that. I'm just kidding. That's terrible.
We got out of.
Well, it's already recording, so
I know, but I was making a joke.
He was trying to catch it. He was trying to catch
it. All the people that are.
It is interesting.
Affected.
Obviously, our compassions go out to people affected. It seems like it's a crazy just spreading. What percent? Do you guys know? Is it contained?
I don't believe it's fully contained right now.
No, I don't think it is either. I think it was like small digit contained. And this
just
is
so everyone knows, we're filming this Tuesday the 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So still might
Did
be
you guys see
that
that Biden, they pulled a and this isn't a political thing, but it was like, hey, we're going to give a one-time payment of $770 to those affected for diapers and waters and things like that.
You know how to fix that, by the way?
What?
Rename California Ukraine. Everybody will get like 50,000.
Well, it's funny that a lot of the insurance companies, because they knew that this was a risk, Allstate, you see that Allstate or State Farm dropped many of these policies prior to. And so a lot of people didn't have fire insurance because they've had no rain. So they were like, we can't renew the policies because we know this is going to happen kind of thing. And
no, everyone knew it was happening. This was not that, I know that it was going to blame climate change, but this is not something that is infrequent. Like people that built in those areas historically had sprinklers installed on their roofs. It was illegal to put shake roofs on your rooftop because when the Santa Ana winds come in, and now everybody's a freaking California climatologist, so forgive me for speaking like this, but this was not. I mean, the political machine will say this is totally the storm of the century and the worst thing that ever happened. This is complete and utter negligence. And this is what happens when you have a one-party system. There's no competency. These are people that have never been executives. I would like Dwight or Peter to be a governor of my state. The reason being is because you both have had to hire, fire, failed, had to run on budget, had to run a profitable business. These people that are running California have mostly never done anything.
Right.
It is sad that politics is something where you get a title, you get to enjoy that, but none of them are an executive that have ever run anything. And these are giant organizations. That's what states are. That's what country is. It's a giant organization.
Right. It's a giant business, a for-profit business. And you're seeing California, 250,000 people have left California in 2024 alone. That was before the freaking fires.
I was going to say, you two sitting in Texas and Florida, how there was a COVID thing and then, there's a migration. I think this is going to be a lot of people saying, F this, we're out of here kind of thing. So anyway, the interesting thing is, at the end of the day, who's going to have to step in and fix this?
Taxpayer.
The government.
Hey, Dwight, can you get a little closer to your microphone too? Sorry, bud.
Me?
No, Dwight.
Oh.
The taxpayer.
Yeah.
The taxpayer, right? And so when we look at, when that happens, they're estimating this is around $320 billion. So when that happens, what do they do? Thanks, Dwight nailed it. They print money. They print money, and it fixes it.
That's how we end up in a Bitcoin conversation. Go on, Pete.
Do you remember how we're not?
Well, by the way,
I actually
Florida's
wasn't
not absolved. Florida's not absolved for this, by the way. FYI.
What do you say?
So Florida is not absolved from this discussion because we're getting massive storms here. At a more frequent basis. The actuarial studies for insurance companies are like, okay, this happens I'm making it up, once every 100 years. But now it could be like once every 30 or 40 years. And my insurances are going through the roof. But yet, if, God forbid, an impact of a storm in my area, we're going to be in the same situation. The only difference is, Florida is like, you look at the west coast of Florida where that hurricane just hit. DeSantis has rebuilt those bridges already. They're being built and finished already. This storm was in February.
Yeah, but he wasn't relying on FEMA. He had his own treasury ready to go for that, right? Yeah, that's the difference. I don't think. And then in California,
you had the reservoirs literally empty. And by the way, Trump has a way of speaking that just makes it so comical and easy to poke fun of. But he was saying about raking the forest. Remember that conversation?
That was on Rogan.
I'm sorry?
On Joe Rogan.
Yeah, right. He's like, they don't clean the dead material out. Now that I have my property, all the ranchers say, you got to burn this. There's all this material on the ground. Forest fires happen. You just want to burn them frequently so it regenerates the forest. It's healthy. But if you're such an environmentalist that you don't want to touch anything, this is what happens. There's dry material. It's really unfortunate. And I'm hoping that we have now the ability to do an inquiry into it. And that with the optics of transparency, people can be held responsible. In order to make change, people need to be held responsible. We, as CEOs and leaders of our company, are ultimately held responsible if something bad happens.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lack of, there's a transparent process to private sector business, right? Like, and there's no like meritocracy in the government thing.
Right. But we're forced to be consumers of our government. We're forced to pay these taxes. It's like, what are you getting in exchange for it? It used to be great weather, but now California is, have either of you guys been to California? Let's take the forest fires aside. Have either of you been in the last 2 years?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What was your impression? Did you see a big difference?
I was in Santa Barbara, so
I was too.
Okay.
I was in Santa Barbara, and I was sitting in a coffee shop and saw people come in, take stuff, and walk out.
Oh,
I've never seen that before. These are nice places.
Like you said, it's a one-party system. It's pushed to one extreme. Everything about our country is the beauty of it is that there's balance.
Right. And free market enterprise.
Party. Yeah.
Look what's happened with Boeing. Like Boeing is having all those catastrophes and whistleblower stuff. That's take it to a business sense. That's a monopoly. Boeing is our aircraft manufacturer. Sure. If there's no competition, then you get stagnant results. That's why we as dentist entrepreneurs have to keep refreshing, innovating, constantly innovating. You and I are worried on any given night about how to stay ahead because we know that our position is not guaranteed to us. And that's just the antithesis of what's going on in government. I'm sorry. I didn't know we were going there. I got all hot and bothered.
No, I think that was good. Obviously that's not the concept for today. What we're going to be talking about is something that, is a complete, nothing related to fires or BTC or AI or anything. It's really about kind of the ground game of team building. I think so many times we talk about the sexy things in dentistry, right? Build a building and how you doing this and multiple locations. And then you forget some of the things that really get you to all those is the culture and the team and things like that. So I know we all have different styles of team building, right? I had to kind of go through a redo recently of, I would say, I wouldn't say my culture stunk, but I would say that there was a job dissatisfaction at scale, employee satisfaction. And that wasn't due to like lack of team building, because as you guys know, we did vacations and blah, blah, blah. And, we do bonuses, but it was some other things going on. So I guess from a first principles standpoint, like why do you guys do team building activities, Dwight? Just do you do them? And then why do you do them? Because a lot of offices don't do stuff like, to build a team together.
Yeah, I think, we do them. We do some as enterprise level, meaning everybody's included. And we do a lot more local and departmental, because it's more about developing those local teams. They have to wake up every day and work with each other than throwing these giant events, which we do a couple times a year or whatever, but that's a different scenario.
Now, Dwight, are those tied to are some of those events tied to performance, or are they just baked into what you're going to do? Right. Meaning like a celebratory party, if we hit X, Y, and Z, and maybe it's discretionary on your part, but or are they already pre-planned regardless of how the company performs?
The vast majority of our departmental and local are just social supportive, like keeping the team interacting outside of the office and de-stressing. That's the vast majority.
For example, can you give me an example?
So let's say, the team is just kind of every quarter, every team takes some time away to go to either a happy hour or a dinner together. Yeah. Especially if there's a new team member, they take a lot of time to just say, hey, we're going to go out. We're going to go to lunch together. We're going to get to know each other, kind of do that outside the office, or else there's never some integration.
Yep.
And so that's kind of part of it. So that's just kind of general ops.
Is that, do you encourage that sort of thing? Craig, I'm going to get to you because I know you have a different approach as well. Do you encourage that? Meaning like, hey, if you hygienists want to go have a happy hour and discuss best principles, right, best practices, like I'm happy to pay for that. No,
it's quite structured for us,
okay.
Meaning it's, you get this amount of specific time, this amount of budget during these times, because, multi-location at some point in time, it's going to get out of hand, and some groups don't want to necessarily do it. So there's only so much you can force that upon them. Right.
I think you're bringing up a good distinction. Whereas like, I think this is where we start talking about the solo location versus multi, and you feel without having some of this cultural and team building stuff, you can get fragmented pretty quickly.
No doubt.
And so Craig, tell me, you've had a long, illustrious career of doing it right and doing it wrong. Tell me kind of why you are such an advocate of team building, and maybe have you always been that way?
Yeah. So just kind of keeping because I know we talked about the politics and stuff like that. So, and I just want to just double click on the parallel. Business is essentially innovation and marketing. And unfortunately, patients can't readily determine the quality of our dentistry. I wish they could. I always say that I wish they could, because a lot of us would be a lot busier. And frankly speaking, some of us would be a lot slower. But what they can discern is the quality of the interaction. And that's entirely dependent on your team. So studies show that patients will refer more optimistically based on, unfortunately, the way your facility looks and the camaraderie and chemistry of the team. So the doctor assistant interactions and the ancillary staff interactions with each other. So I see team building as more important than your marketing budget, more important than anything else. And additionally, if you look at your team, it's the largest percentage of your expenditure and your profit and loss. If you're doing everything right, 5% for supplies, 7% for facility, more or less, 2 to 5% on marketing. But team, even if you're doing it really, really lean, it's still almost 25%. It's the largest segment. So, if you're nice to your CAT scan, your CT scan, your cone beam, it doesn't take a better image. If you're nice to your landlord, he doesn't charge you less rent. It doesn't get more efficient. But if you're good to your team, you can leverage it. You can fix your capital expenditure there. So I see team building as the single most critical thing. If you had a practice that had good dentistry and phenomenal team culture, I would think everything could roll downhill favorably for you than if you had phenomenal marketing and phenomenal dentistry and shitty culture. So I've always been it. I'm guilty though, because you pointed very specifically my failings. I'm guilty of team culture.
I said your successes and your failing. I did point specifically.
You pointed out experience.
Yeah, but I mean, my experience is mostly failure in this regard, because what I did, and Peter knows the story well, and Dwight, I know you do too, is try to bend to accommodate team over all else. And you have to base it on merit, and not just because your team and everybody gets free lunch every day. So I think people have general things, whether it's your children or citizens of a state or team members in your practice. If you give them crap for free and they didn't deserve it, they'll tend to resent it. So I was like, as Peter would say, good dog, here's a bone. Bad dog, here's a bone. You need to base it on real things, and people want to earn things. So I think the best thing is to make it clear on what you want to achieve, listen to what they want, and then track the progress such that they're aware of how to win. And when they win, you celebrate. But don't just do it for willy-nilly. It's Wednesday, and the first Wednesday of every month, everybody gets, massages.
Oh, no. I like how you draw it back to the investment of the team, right? Meaning the investment from a P&L perspective. Because if we go back to what Naval talks about, and I know we mentioned this, we've had Eric Jorgensen on the pod. So you and I are, big fans, right? And so if you look at his principles teaching, and you hear how he talks about leverage, and sometimes dentists will hear that and be like, I don't have I'm a dentist, I don't have leverage. But like labor leverage, right? Human capital leverage is a big form. And so to your point, Craig, when it's optimized versus the CT scan, it does create some massive leverage for you, right? So you have capital leverage or labor leverage, but this is a labor leverage thing. And
that's exactly how business is made. I know it's very simple, and you were trying to illustrate that point. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. There's only two ways to make money: labor your knowledge and your hands, or leverage your people rather. So capital leverage, invest $1 and borrow $1 and try to make money on the two, or use your team.
Can I bring up something that since you said hands, right? Can I go into just a short little AI rant?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I know you guys
podcast. We're just a guest.
You guys are, I know you're sick of me, and I gotta say, I'm getting kind of weird down in wormholes with this shit again. I sometimes like I did with crypto, and I go down these paths and I can't pull myself out of like, I don't know. Maybe I have a slight bit of
obsession.
Yeah. OCD. Definitely. Okay. So where I was going with that is, I have discussions with my kids all the time. We were talking about disruption, and then I watched this long form thing. And so with the things that I see coming down the line, you guys, right? With, I talked about that when I was walking on the beach, like agent stuff and some of the other demos that I've seen. This year is going to be fascinating and scary. And here's another thing, how white dentistry is the most beautiful profession in the world, because you look at the jobs that are AI resistant, and dentistry is there, right? Because it relies on your brain. You're not just a diagnostician. You're a diagnostician plus mechanic, artist, whatever you want to call it, right? Meaning there's no robots coming, and that's 15 years away for sure. Versus, like, I was going to do a tweet on this saying, like, if you make your money using your brain or a computer, your days are numbered.
Give some specifics. I have some in my mind.
Okay, so I'm doing, Craig, I think I gave you the example of me kind of acting as my own lawyer recently.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to.
Not as a trial, but it's more just contract law, right? Because there's a large corpus of data from law, right? It's very easy to have that information, right? Case histories and things like that, as well as loading things up that are contextually related to what you're going through. So anyway, I used it recently for something that I thought I was about to pick up the phone to my attorney, and I was like, well, maybe I can get this done. And Dwight, when I say it was like the most beautiful, comprehensive output of a waiver and an amendment that I needed, it was like right there. And I would have been charged, without fail, my attorney would have charged me $5,000 for this. And I think it was superior. And actually, I went so far as to look, I actually then said, hey, can you analyze some of my current operating agreements, and where is there some gaps and holes and things that should have been done that was created by the person? And so that was pretty fascinating too, is to go back and audit pre-existing stuff that I already have, not to change, but just as like, let me pressure test this. So I believe that scenario, I believe lawyers and diagnosticians, if you're a physician, are not AI resistant, right? I believe that office workers and things when you can move a mouse and get paid for it are not AI resistant, especially some of the demos I've seen. And that's where I think dentistry is so great, is that, it's the combination of best of both worlds. You're physically doing something with your hands, and you're doing labor, right? Which for so long people are like, I'm not a laborer. Yeah, you are. And you should be proud of that. Just like HVAC companies and plumbing companies will absolutely prosper in the next 5 years because, and you've seen that private equity has come into those spaces, right? The veterinary space, the plumbing space, the HVAC companies are going crazy because they are AI resistant, and dentists are going to be, there's going to be a new resurgence. You know how buying dentistry and private equity has always been so hot, and I feel like it cooled off in the past 2 years. Personally, I believe there's about to be a resurgence because the private equity capital is going to look at where are these AI resistant things. For example, Salesforce, and I brought this up on the mastermind call.
Yeah,
Salesforce is no longer hiring software engineers. They are a software company, guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's part of what you're talking about. And the one category I would give to only push back slightly, because
please push back. I need it, Dwight. I need someone to push back.
Mostly because the people that are listening. Because here's one thing we want to think about is this is as dumb as AI will ever be. It's getting smarter. So I'm not being hypercritical of where it's at or where it's going. But if you have a subspecialty of knowledge base in a particular issue, and let's say you're writing about let's say legal, you brought legal up. So if you're writing a complex trust document where portions of it, as like, let's say the parents, like me and my wife, are a revocable trust, but the kids are irrevocable.
Yeah, you're talking about art meeting legal, artistry. Like that's a little bit.
That's the point I'm making, right? Like those are the components where it will, unless if you specifically dictate it to be partial revocable, partial irrevocable, things like that, you're going to get caught up in some of those things, and you'll find that it'll make it all revocable, for example, or it'll all make it. And so it does matter, the information and the questions you ask it. A great example is like, there's Ryan Holiday he was on a podcast and I was listening to him, and he was like, it depends on the level of skill, right? It's like, he's a Stoic reader. He knows his Stoicism, right? So like he asked, and he was writing a book. He wanted an AI picture generated Marcus Aurelius sitting somewhere doing whatever and writing on a scroll, right? Well, the people in the background were there in the background and they had glasses on. Well, back then they didn't have glasses on, right? I know. So this is as dumb as it's going to get. Don't get me wrong. It's going to get better. But there is a level that's high enough that you don't want to solely rely on it quite yet in every capacity.
No, Dwight, you're right.
Legal and things like that. So,
I agree. It's in distinct,
but it's coming.
Use cases, right? Like I gave you that example. Another example, quickly, I'll just show you. Well, and I think back to your point, like Craig, the advancements, like the IQ of OpenAI 01 was about 120. Right. Grok 3, which was just released, is like 160 now. So you can see it's not just a linear advancement over time. Like this year, we'll probably have a 200 IQ for sure. Other example,
it's indispensable for me, guys. It's indispensable.
It totally for me too. I mean, I just wrote something to my daughter's teacher back. I actually used it. She was studying for the SSATs this past weekend she took, and she was like, Dad, can you help me with this math problem? I don't know if you guys have looked into 8th grade math lately. I'm sure you have, Craig, because you have one. Dwight, you're going to get there. But like, you feel like a dummy, a dummy. I'm like, I don't think we ever did this. And she's like, Dad, this is like 8th grade math. I'm like, well, I don't think I ever did this. So what I did is I broke out. So in order to save myself, I thought about AI. I broke out my GPT app. I opened up the camera function, the vision, and I said, I said, hey, do you see what I'm seeing? And it was like, yeah, I see you're looking at your daughter's, some math problems. Would you like me to help you work through those? At which time I handed it over to my daughter, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to hand the phone to you. Can you guide her through how to solve this? Because I don't have any idea. And it was like, absolutely. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take, and literally 5 minutes later, I heard her say, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it was watching, she was holding the phone and it was watching her pencil do work. So it was looking at the problem, but it was also watching her work. And I was like, holy shit, there's the future of education. Right. No doubt. Because I asked my kids, like, how often do you get instruction, just one-on-one instruction during the day? They go to private school. How often does the teacher sit with you every day and go over, watch you and do things? And they both were like 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, sometimes some minutes. So I was like, awesome. So you're getting like 10 minutes of private instruction a day, right? Anyway, I ran. Yeah. All right. Sorry, guys.
Well, funny enough, you said two things. I just want to just get this off my chest as maybe a potential idea for either one of you. So Dwight, you brought up Marcus Aurelius and, the memoirs and the last great Roman emperor. Like, I have this list. And I joke around, like, if I get hit by a bus, I want my son to read it specifically. But imagine just saying to Claude or ChatGPT, write me out a 150, because my son needs to read a book. And I'm like, geez, I wish you were old enough. He's 12. He can't probably handle memoirs because it's, Marcus Aurelius, it's a little bit written in a translation from Old English. It's originally from Latin, of course.
Latin, yeah.
So imagine just we should be building our own books. So give me Marcus Aurelius's memoirs written as 150 words, an approachable book for my 12-year-old son. That book needs to be written. Like, that 12-year-old or 15-year-old Marcus Aurelius for teenagers, just like there's Rich Dad, Poor Dad for teens. It's like all of the books we love, Naval Ravikant's The Almanac, should be written 150 words for our kids. So I'm just thought of that.
And that's a perfect tool for doing that. You're right, Greg. Take this and distill it down,
export and make it entertaining for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, make it entertaining.
and real world examples. I mean, that would be a best-selling book right there. Marcus Aurelius for Kids. Whoever does that, and they take this, and I've proven that by downloading the IP address that you've taken this, Peter Boulden's going to sue you and get royalties.
I love that you said it wasn't going to be you.
But Peter's going to give me the money, though. It's good cop, bad cop. He's got to play the outward bulldog, and I'm the benevolent.
Craig, if anyone needs to remind you, there's no money in books. I will be the first.
I was about to say
that is not true, Peter. You haven't seen a recent revenue check from the Bulletproof book. 27 cents. 7 cents. Perfect. 27 cents.
Do you guys, I'm gonna revert back to, because I want to keep this about dentistry, because I don't think anyone wants us to be here to opine, as Craig says, on AI or fires, even though I'm going to revert it back to some things on team building. And I have a specific question for you guys on this, because I get asked this. Do you provide alcohol at your team events?
Very limited.
Very limited. Okay, Dwight, say more.
So even at our end of year parties, or let's call it the biggest party that you'll do, it's limited, meaning it's capped per person, whether it's a
couple cocktails, right?
Couple cocktails, something like that. The truth is that the liability is too large. And in this world that we live in, it does create that conflict. Not to mention, tell me one of our masterminders who's had a blowout session of alcohol, go from there, and then the next 2 months, tell me how many people they lost, right? Things were said, comments were made.
Guys, Trey is not here, so I don't appreciate you. No, seriously, Dwight, it's just not cool. But go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I love every bit of that.
Trey is currently under the influence right now.
No doubt.
But he's on propofol.
But it's propofol because it's colonoscopy.
So that's
he's not pulling a Michael Jackson. He's medically supervised. FYI.
That's correct. The truth is, and I'll be the first to say it, that early on, I felt that was part of the connection. That was actually driven by the team. Like, hey, let's go out, let's have a drink, let's do happy hours. It was an easy, get over the stress of dentistry.
Social lubricant, right?
Yeah.
So
it did
true,
what it needed to do. And here we are. But the truth is that as we've grown, the truth is your buildings are nicer, the team is bigger, the company's bigger, everything's more of a liability. And I had my business office come in and say, we didn't have a lawsuit this year. So we're ecstatic. We had an extra $70K of money that we had put aside just in case, because that's whatever. And it's like, hey, we can allocate this to this and this and this. And
Dwight,
it's just
you realize what you're doing right now. You're speaking this into the universe. You're about to get served when you walk out of here.
I know, right? But those are the things.
I'll
those
sue
things
you, Dwight,
happen.
so we can get it over with.
That works, and I'll send you the bill via a scam email that you can just pay them.
I'll send you my Nigerian bank account.
I agree with you, Dwight. And, I didn't want to ever be, it's that fine line. Of course, your smart brain says don't serve alcohol, don't give alcohol. But then you'd have people being like, what the nerd is going on here? Right. So it's that fine line. We do a couple drink tickets, right? Just to help everybody. And then, at least that's defensible from my side, meaning it wasn't open bar. If someone gets more tickets, I can't.
We
go ahead.
Cut the night off earlier too.
That's true.
We cut the party off, call it at 10, and then people might go wherever, but they're out of my hands at that point, right? There's only so much that can be done. And so let's say you start a party at 6:30 or 7, you do the raffle, you do giveaway stuff, you do whatever, people eat real well, a couple drink tickets with good meals, it's not going to be much of a problem. And then they're out. And so you cut it off. It's when you let things go and go and go and go and the bar is open and things happen. That's when, you got battles and issues and people talking about I should be paid more and whatever. And you're like, I'm out.
So Dwight, multiple locations, do you do, and Craig was the one who kind of really pushed me to start doing this more, even though I didn't really want to know, because sometimes you don't want to be exposed, but do you do kind of double blind employee satisfaction surveys at all your locations? No, you don't.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Craig, you obviously still do that, right? It's hard medicine sometimes. I was the recipient of some of that hard medicine. It wasn't directed at me per se, but just as your organization, which is by proxy kind of you, especially us being founders and stuff like that, you take it to heart, of course. And when your satisfaction is hovering in the 50s, you know that this is a reason that there's been a lot of a lack of employee retention, some apathy going on, a lot of things like that. But unless you measure it, for me, Dwight, unless I was able to quantify it and measure it, I didn't really know what was going on. I was like, the culture's not so hot right now, but I didn't know why. And it was the data points that helped me get into it. And I'm not saying that like these outings or team building things was the antidote to fixing that, but they are a small part of it. I guess my follow-up question to you, Dwight, is with multiple locations, how do you get the sentiment of people? Like, how do you understand the sentiment without asking them? Do you rely on your managers, I guess?
I forget if it was Chamath or who in the All In podcast, because every single one of them said, we do not do 360 reviews. That is the most toxic thing, because you're literally opening yourself up. It is an excuse for a lack of a middle management strong team who's touching and interacting with team members and really developing their skills. So if you don't have that, it makes sense to do that, but you're kind of opening yourself up to just be the negative collector, right?
Can I play counterbalance to that for a second?
I'm just telling you kind of the way that was discussed. And I tend to see it in a sense of like, if we don't have good leadership in a location, then you have to go spend time there. My middle management team needs to be there. My director of everybody's got to spend time. There's got to be touches everywhere.
But how do you know is my point.
Doing the work. How
what
do
is
I know
the indication? What is the KPI that you know? Like, is it just we feel it? Something's broken. We all need to go in with resuscitation.
You can absolutely see, let's say bonuses are being hit. Turnover is low. Right? Like, it doesn't take that much, but then the next thing is touches. We had one practice who's a part of a DSO join us last July. And they said, we joined that DSO. It was awesome in the first month and a half. And then we never saw them again. And we were doing the same job we were doing before, except we paid out a check in addition to, right? And now all they say is
well, they got a check too, Dwight.
Yes, the initial check. But the point is that now all they talk about is the constant of like, your team's always here. They're always making us better. We're moving people to other locations to help them train up. Like, you can't replace training and development of people with a 360 review. Now, if you don't have the ability to do that, then a 360 review might be helpful. But,
well, I wasn't talking about reviews, bud. I mean, I hear you on the, and I want to push back on the Chamath and Sachs comment because I do remember they did that. And they live in technological worlds that are completely male dominated pretty much. Right. And so dentistry, I think it's a difference in sexes. Like, dentistry is completely dominated pretty much by human as a female profession. Would you both agree? So I think that dynamics
total number of people in dentistry is by far female. Because it's not
and so I think the dynamics are different. I think they can sit there and, from their confirmational bias and be like, oh, this is toxic and blah, 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 because I don't know, maybe they can be toxic masculinity. I don't know, but we can't do that.
I think the majority of, if your organization their leadership is run by the same types of people that work there, meaning women are our primary leaders in our organization to lead women, then that does work. The balance works. But
I love that you said this, Dwight, because honestly, what is not fun is when you get on when all four of us are like, yep, we all do that the exact same way. Like, and then it's crickets. I love when you say, hey, I don't do that, and here's why. And you defended it quite well, actually.
Well, it's a matter of like, if you put a suggestion box outside your office, what are you going to get?
Right.
Like, are you going to get, oh, I just want to tell you how much I love my job.
Right.
Like,
that's true.
Like, it's the truth of it. It doesn't mean it's wrong. Like, please let me re-underline what I said. If you don't have people investing in other people's development and moving them around and touches with everybody in your organization, businesses do not break at the top or at the bottom. They break at middle management, in the middle. And so if you're not doing that hard work, then yes, you've got to profile your people to figure out what the issue is and gather that data. And I would think Craig would agree with that if you don't have that leadership or you're touching and actually investing in people. When our practices were small, we all did that with every single employee. Yeah. You know everybody's name.
You're right.
You knew what their lives were about, what was going on. Well, we can't do that anymore, but you do need people who can. And that can't be replaced by whatever type of evaluation system, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. different perspective.
I think it's great. Craig, what say you?
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys, actually. I like to get the data. It's a hard pill to swallow, but I want to know how things are trending. And, you said just one part of that story, Pete. You got NP, Net Promoter Scores of dissatisfaction, and got intel and acted on it, and then turned it to high level satisfaction.
Yeah, 90s now, right?
So it went from bad to really, really good. And had you not done that, you wouldn't know. I don't think that data should be public at all, but it's just internal. I think most companies, it's a sound thing to do that. But
it made sense too, Craig. I think what you're saying, it from what I was looking at, like, golly, there's some leaks going on. I don't know what. And so when you kind of reverse engineer, it kind of came back to the fact that, like, yeah, some people are unhappy, and they're unhappy with whether they're being paid, and they're unhappy with the bonus system. They're unhappy with, yeah, go ahead, Dwight.
But correct me if I'm wrong. You were kind of what I would consider in an under construction section. You had a leadership transition and things of that nature to a certain degree, at least somewhere in there. You lost feeling of control or connection?
No, actually, it was due to that person leaving. That was the prompt for digging into finding out what the hell was going on. So yes, there was transition, but it was definitely a rebuilding process, right? And it's so crazy how you think that, like, when you're going through that, you're like, oh my God, this is never going to be fixed, right? And then you get in there and you roll your sleeves up and you're like 3 months later, you're like, oh shit, it happened. This is way better. This is so much better, right? So, and I just think this is where I think that it is superior to have one big location versus multiples, because it's always been challenging for me to cut myself into pieces and go everywhere. So I don't hear the, hey, it's good to see you. Where you been? Oh, I haven't seen you in a long time. Right. Those kind of
constant.
Things. Yeah.
When am I going to see
you? And it's like, I promise you, I'm not like at home eating bonbons, but like sometimes I can't be here all the time. And so versus Craig, when you come into your building, Craig, you get FaceTime with all the people that are driving your revenues. And so I think that's where I was going, is that the team building is, I love, Dwight, where you said it should be done at the local level, right? The unit level, and it should also be done at scale. So you kind of know, like, where's the camaraderie and the big thing. But at the end of the day, I think the best is the core unit of that individual office, because people enact change when they know they have a result to do it. Let me, I didn't say that clearly. If I'm one of 100 people divided over, 5, 10 locations, then my actions don't get counted as much, right? At that level, because it's like, oh, dude, you don't even see what you're doing. But at the local level, when you're a team of 5, those actions are highly magnified, right?
Huge impact.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
I agree.
I think it's also important too, because, I get a lot of, I'm doing a small talk for, I think it's, what's the dental school? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting this, but I want to shout out to Brooks Norton from the dental school in Augusta. What's that called? Medical College?
I don't know. They changed the name like every 4, like it's like Medical College of Georgia, or then it was Regents, and
Augusta
let's just say
School.
Georgia Dental School.
Shout out to the Masters Dental School. But he's saying, I just don't know. I don't know.
Wait, you're doing a lecture there, Craig?
No. Just like a 1 hour talk.
I was hoping you would, because when I lectured there in 2017, I got booted out. Remember that story when I was like, y'all need me?
No, this is the students. It's easy to impress students.
Well, they were not paying attention to me, Craig, and I was testy at the time.
Did you wear a bow tie? Because I think people in Augusta like to wear bow ties.
I do not. I don't even own a bow tie.
I don't either, but that would have probably, had you asked me, I would have told you. Anyway, So let me get back on track. So I think people ask a very common question to me. They're like, I just don't know if I'm more Pete's camp or your camp. And I say, well, let's drive, like, multi-location, single location. I think that, we always say that the ultimate ROI is your happiness. So if you know who you are and you know what you like to do, build that. So yes, maybe there's a couple more dollars at the end of the rainbow if you build what Dwight built, or you built what I built, or whatever flavor in between. But what do you really want? Dwight, I think I recognize your office. You're in the corporate office right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Pete, you're at your corporate office, right?
Correct.
And I'm built like my little office within the practice, because I want to be exposed to tons and tons of people. So if I could build a box that houses 70 people versus 15, I'm happier just because I love just seeing people. And my best friend Mike was just here a minute ago, and he's like, dude, it's crazy. You know, Candace showed up from Jamaica at your practice, and all these friends you get to see, and all these people. I'm like, at the core, I'm just a connector.
Right.
I'm a networker connector. That's my best and highest use.
What are
if I
some
could
of
be
the
here and
things...
shake some hands and kiss some babies, or kiss some babies and shake some, no, shake some babies and kiss some. I always get that wrong.
Don't shake the baby.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying.
But
so like,
I will say,
I know I'm making a joke, but like, know yourself, know what you want.
But to make that comment, like, irregardless of whether you think you're in Pete or Craig camp, FYI, like, build your first good dental practice. Like,
flagship.
I don't even care. Like,
flagship.
Like, build it well, and don't pick up another practice until you're actually profitable and effective in that practice. And because story of my life, that's all I hear everywhere is constantly like, half of the practices that Peter and I are buying are practices that went through that and are failing. And we got to be able to say, hey, I'm going to pick that up off of you and take those away. Like, that's purely available, you know? So just don't do that to yourself.
What have been some things that you guys have done that you said from a team building perspective that have been home runs, and what have been potential failures where you're like, that did not work out like I thought, and it was expensive and it was time consuming, and Dwight, go.
We got to the point where we had so many people on the team because we don't have a dental plan. We take care of our patients or our team's dental, right? Obviously. And so one of the things that we did that really turned out well was that one Saturday a quarter at a different location that was capable and able to do it, we would just have a dental day. And so for the first half of the day, people would come in and get all their care, get their implants, get their whatever. It was free dentistry for our team without constantly like, can you fit me in between these two patients, as opposed to doing the same day for the dentistry of the patient. And then for the second half of the day, we would have food trucks out there, and our families would come, people would bring their dogs. And so it was like a community thing.
That's a
where
great
you got
idea.
got the solution of like, hey, I got my dentistry done, not kind of hyper speed in between two patients because there was a small cancellation, or I got my cleaning done during that time. Like, hygiene gets booked, doctors get booked, and then it becomes kind of a little hangout session afterwards, and it's great. Like, it's a great way to do it.
So it was for team members and their families to come get dentistry done.
Correct. Yeah,
I love that, Dwight. I'm writing that down. That's a great idea.
And so that was
you did a food truck and made it a social event, so people feel like they got something was in it for them. They got to hang out. I love it.
And the main comment was like, before I felt guilty taking up chair time because it was like, because we're a heavy, like, same day dentistry, like, let's get bonus, like everybody's moving and grooving, and then be like, what's that person doing in the chair? Like get them out of there. And some people need real care, like sedation for wisdom teeth, like all those things are done. And so it's important that we do it that way.
I love that. You know, in so many, you hear about practices that will kind of do that, donate for a charity, right? But I would think that, like, you got to take care of your own first and then expand that into that. I love that. I love that. So that's a huge success. Obviously, all it cost you is opportunity cost in the food truck, but I think there's a massive dividend and your employees feeling taken care of. Like, that's a huge, you know, I always talk about, I get people on my website, there's like the benefits to working here beyond money of like, you know, there could be trips and there could be this and 401 and health insurance. Like, that's something I would add in, is like, you get your dental stuff, like it's a dental needs party kind of thing. I would add that in there. Right.
Yeah.
So give me a failure of something that you've, give me a failure.
I think it goes down to being like, hey, just go grab a happy hour at the end of the day, or go do some of those things, and we'll cover.
That's a failure.
Like, it's been a failure, because it brought out, you know, when the director of operations or the regional gets a phone call from the office manager after the happy hour that something happened, it's a tell that that's probably not the best protocol, because like you said, there's liquid courage and people are willing to say what they really wanted to say during the time. And the truth is sometimes you don't need all that. Like, it's just drama. It's just absolute drama. And not all the people, you know, the truth is we're a very diverse group. There's a lot of people that don't drink, and therefore that's less valuable to them. There's this, it's that. And so it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, even if they do go out, they're going to go out and maybe they can have a drink or whatever, because other people are not going to have that. So,
okay. Craig, best thing, worst thing?
My failures are easier. I'd say the worst failure is the gift that has no merit. So,
sure.
What do you mean?
The click coin for me, the SDG buck that was just given out. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, had this peer-to-peer recognition program where the team gets $50 to give to another team member. So it's peer-to-peer recognition.
Which is a huge form of team building, by the way.
Amazing. Yes. It's amazing team building. So what happens is you give it to the person in the team that is giving the most amount of help and following the core values. So what winds up happening, since it's a true meritocracy, is certain people may get thousands of dollars of these SDG bucks at the end of the year, and others may get none because it's team to team recognition, and that value that gives a lot of people, very good positive feelings about their levels of appreciation. To compound the benefit, it's not allowed to be redeemed for cash. You have to use it for an experience. So people will tell me oftentimes that I would have never done a dinner at Ruth Chris, or I would have never taken a 3-day cruise because it's just not in my budget. Someone making $25 an hour, $21 an hour typically does not have $1,500 laying around to go to a special event like that. So people will remember.
Oh, yeah. True connection.
Craig, check your recording just to make sure. I know we're still live, but make sure you didn't hit some button that said Craig had stopped recording. So just make sure, and then we can roll on. Okay, so he will be back with us.
Mine's still recording.
But you know where I think he was going with that is that was given out this click coins, and it used to be called SDG care or SDG bucks, but it used to be given out. Craig, I'm finishing your story. That used to be given out every month, regardless of what.
So let me jump in if you can hear me. So it's my success and my failure.
Okay.
So the reason why it was my greatest success is when it worked, it gave people such amazing feelings of joy that they were recognized. But the reason why it was my biggest failure as well is because we gave it out to everyone every month, regardless of performance. So what wound up happening is I had to institute a penalty if you didn't give out your $50. So we gave out.
What was the penalty?
So check this out. So we'd give out 50 at $50. That's like 250,000, right? Am I doing the math right?
What
no,
you
kidding.
gave out $50?
50 click coins at $50 each, right?
That's 2,500.
I know, I was kidding with you. I'm just making sure you're paying attention.
Sorry.
And we'd say, okay, give them out before December 30th because we have to, have our books closed for the year. And people would just hang on to it, not even give it away. So the penalty, I had team members that I was paying to go up to Becky and say, hey, Becky, you've got click coins. So it just was completely not valued. So my advice to people, again, is take a page out of socialism. When things are just given out without any regard to meritocracy or merit or benefit or work, people tend to resent it.
Yeah.
There's an internal thing. People want to earn it. That's why
salad again.
I'm sorry?
Salad again.
Chicken.
Yeah, you know it. Free lunches every single day. We've had grilled chicken 2 times. I was thinking barbecue chicken. I'm like, that's $80,000. That's a lot of that's a Porsche.
That's a lot of EBITDA.
That's what we both said. We both said
$80,000 a year. That's a lot more than
that's really costing you $800,000 in terms of your enterprise value. But it's okay. It's okay. You gotta have a clear vision.
Yeah. So that's just
what you're trying to say is it wasn't tethered to results of their job.
Yes.
Meaning why you hired them.
Right.
And that is the component.
And so this is the beauty of it, Dwight. I completely hijacked that thing. When I met Craig, I learned that they did the SDG bucks at the time. I immediately hijacked that and made it
put it into a book. Yeah, I remember.
With Chris Tuff. And I was the originator. Like Craig says, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Doesn't matter.
But I attached it to a metric of like we've got to hit at least tier X or tier 4, I think it was.
Yeah.
You know, and recently I actually asked, back to team building, I recently asked because I didn't know, I thought it was, Craig, kind of being underappreciated because I'd see some people wouldn't deploy it like you're saying. And that still happens even when they earn it, Craig. And I actually asked Kim, I said, hey, is this still like a worthwhile expense? And she was like, oh yeah, like all day long, you know, on the Slack channels, because a lot of us communicate via Slack between offices, all day long in the Slack channels, there's this social acknowledgement, public acknowledgement for that. And so she's like, it's totally working. And it's a huge tenet of our culture, especially being that we have a fragmented culture because we have multiple locations. So that was great, Craig, that you had, that was kind of your best case scenario and your worst case scenario, kind of all in one. I liked that. I would say that mine has been, maybe I'm coming off the high of combining outside humans coming in to teach. Like recently we booked a brewery, and for the morning, and we didn't do it just to have beers, but it was a cool spot. And we had Deborah Nash come in and speak. Right. And, you know, just that difference in energy, kind of like what we saw at the Bulletproof Summit last year, where Deborah, you know, is very captivating. She's highly engaging people. And I was like, my team needs some of that. And yes, it was fun. It was educational and it was social all in one. But I felt as the business owner, like we moved the needle forward on taking that happiness that I had and kind of like doubling down on it, as Dwight would say, right? I just kind of hammered that down and getting outside energy, even if they've already heard all this stuff before. It's so nice when you have someone come in, it's like, hey, y'all should be doing this. And like, we do that, you know, like that's a feel good thing for the team. Mm-hmm. So that was good. I can't recommend her enough, by the way. Like my team, I got so many private notes and emails, like, thank you for doing that. Like, thank you for bringing someone in, you know, because look, sometimes you look at Deborah and you're like, well, I could give this, you know, did you guys know that like I have a summit and I could do this stuff too, but like they don't want to hear me anymore. They don't want to hear Craig. You know, your team doesn't want to hear you, Craig. Dwight, your team doesn't want to hear you. Yeah. You know,
I don't want to hear me.
That's an idea of I think that is probably my biggest win. I think one of my biggest fails is probably that I think it's probably the vacations. And the vacations, I'm gonna put the caveat, Craig, on it that it's great and it's not. The vacations that we have done in the past have been great, right? It's great pictures and it looks cool from a story perspective and all these things.
Can you explain to people what you did?
Okay, yeah, sorry. So Dwight, every year at the beginning of the year, I would say, hey, we did, you know, let's call it, we'll just use, you know, we did $12 million last year. Yeah. This year, if we can do this much, you know, here's our goals. And then here's our beach goal, we would call it. Right. Yeah. So it was this stretch goal.
Like a BHAG, like big hairy.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Crazy like, reach.
And I would do the math knowing that like between flights and the all inclusive, it was going to be like, you know, $70,000 to do it. Right. So I reverse engineered the incremental that we would need from that BHAG to then make it not hurt the business, right? Everyone had to win. I had to win. The business had to win. The team members had to win.
Right.
And, you know, my partners. And so, you know, so you almost want that to happen, right? Because it's baked in. The success of that is the economics are baked in. So I loved the narrative of that. But here's what happened is that you expected the incentive to drive behavior from January 1 to the next January 1. And what happened was it didn't drive behavior until November of the following year when people knew, oh, coincidentally, we are close. Oh, shit. Right. And so then they put the foot on the gas. And so maybe it shouldn't matter if you achieve it or not. Who cares how you get there? But it didn't really drive behavior.
I agree with that. I think there's a human bias.
Too far out.
If there's distance between reward and the action, you know, like Pavlovian, like the bell rings, you better give that dog a treat. It's not the bell rings, and in 3 weeks you can talk about giving a treat. Need so. And
invariably, guess what? Some people couldn't go on the trip. Some spouses wouldn't let them go on a trip without them, kind of thing. And so, like, I think at the end of the day, everyone without fail would have been like, hey, can you just give me that $1,500 instead? Right. And so it was like, kind of like, that's my analogy, Craig, to like salad again. It was like, trip, really? Like, so I think there's so many, I don't regret any of those activities because they are fond memories for me, all those trips, and it was fun and it was team building.
Yeah, you always liked them, Pete. I remember
I did like them, right? And it was a chance for me to really spend time. I mean, I guess I could go around and hang out in the offices and do that, but it was a chance for me to kind of like hang out with people that I really liked, and I didn't get a chance to because we're all freaking busy. So anyway, that's there's so much on that. Anything else, guys? I want to keep it. We're at 55 minutes. Today we have talked about fires, AI, and I think we've fully fleshed out the team building.
Oh, I have one more thing to talk about if you don't mind.
Please.
Go ahead.
We have, I think, 2 spots still left on our health retreat.
Dwight, why aren't you going?
Yeah, Dwight, you should go. Peter and I, this is a non-for-profit for us.
Yeah.
So we're not.
It really is.
No,
Dwight,
that's not meaning to be that we are doing it like business. All right,
when is it, guys? Again, remind everybody.
It's for BP Health. Uchi's going to be there. It's the February. If you go to BP Health Retreat, Dwight.com,
I can do that.
It's all inclusive. It's at this beautiful resort in Scottsdale called Savannah. So it's like all you have to do is get there, and everything's included: your hotel, massages, your meals, all the education. And of course, we are there as a health retreat, and Uchi's going to teach us all these things.
And I got a functional medicine doctor just registered, so he's training us too. He's
coming as an attendee, correct?
An attendee, but he's going to add tons of value.
Yeah.
And this is such an important thing.
By the way, I'm going to talk about biohacks. I'm sure by the campfire.
This guy's off the deep end. You guys are going to go out down a rabbit hole.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, Dwight, you need to come to that. It's
I should. Yeah,
check it out. Are you on the website?
Yeah, it's a great website.
Scottsdale. Yeah, so let us know. We're just Pete and I had just kind of selfish motivations, like, hey, we should really spend more time learning about this stuff. And it's funny because Pete was into this stuff 5 years ago, and I'm just catching up now. I was at
you're
my
taking
regular
action,
medical
man.
doctor.
You really are. Finally.
Yeah. Well, listen, I was at my regular medical doctor and realized, oh my God, this is really basic shit. I go to the Cleveland Clinic. It's like a whole step in the right direction. But then you read Peter Attia's book or listen to Mark Hyman or talk to Pete for a little while. You're like, this is still medicine 1.0 with a couple extra tests and a pretty folder that I go home with. And then you get to another level. And I had this medical doctor, Kevin Green, that's coming to the retreat. He sat down with me for a full hour. I met him through Paul Vigario. Shout out to Paul. He saved his dad, and he sat down with me for 2 hours. He's like, let me see all your results from Cleveland Clinic. And I showed him. He's like, where's your this? Where's your that? Where's your particle size? Why'd they put you on Crestor when?
Where's your myeloperoxidase?
Yeah, the MF gene. Where's all this stuff? And I'm just like, I'm at the Cleveland fucking clinic, spending all this money, and I have a beautiful folder and a thermos and I'm still getting reactive healthcare. So it's a real treat. The greatest thing that you can do. And I know I said this last year. Remember, you guys said, what's your plan for next year? I said, my health. I learned and experience is expensive. All I got was I spent a lot of money. I didn't get ahead. This is the year I get ahead because I'm going to go with data. So if you're thinking that you need to prioritize your health, definitely come to this event. It will absolutely change your life. Between Uchi and this medical professional, it will absolutely change your life.
That's so good, man. I really, what I've noticed differently than you, because I've kind of gone along this journey with you, is that you'll get information and you'll get some information and you didn't take action, and now you're kind of like, dude, you know what? The time for not taking action is gone. I'm going to do something, and
but I had to get your ideas were seemingly to me fringe, just like the Bitcoin thing. You're telling me to buy Bitcoin at 1,500. I'm like, I'm not buying 50. I'd rather buy Bitcoin at 64 and escalating than 1,500 and floundering. So it's the same thing with your medical advice, Pete. I called you. I'm like, shit, man, I should have listened to you. Dude, you're taking action now. And then okay, I bought Bitcoin at 18,000. Dude, I should have listened to you now. You're like, dude, you have one whole Bitcoin. Most people don't have a Bitcoin. Remember when I first bought my first one?
Totally.
So, yeah. But listen, your health is the most important thing of all of it. So I implore you, if you're not in the condition that you want to be in, take 2 days, change your life. You will be able to change your life. You'll get tons of information.
And not just from a diagnostics of blood work and stuff like that, but ergonomics and just lifestyle things that I think, I mean, I did this. I abused the damn shit out of my body because I thought I was indestructible in dentistry. And you get contorted for 8 hours a day. And then you recognize like, oh shit, my hand's busted up. My back's kind of crooked. Like, like my head's my posture's too forward. And like, you recognize you're not indestructible. When you're 25, you think you are. When you're 48, you don't.
And one final push for this too. I know I'm getting salesy, but not one single cent of this comes to Peter and I. This is a true non-for-profit activity. There's not a single dollar profit that we get. If you are sitting here in the beginning of the new year and you have not, or beginning of the year, and you have not really mapped out what you want and you're confused, you're in a state where you don't know what you want, I'm going to be there. I love talking about this stuff. There's no better time than to go to a beautiful place like Scottsdale, rather, at a beautiful resort, Savannah. Check it out online, Civanna. Check it out. This is a wonderful 3-day retreat for you to take time away from your family, away from your spouse, so that you can reset and focus on what's important, which is you and what drives you. And makes you happy.
Your story is one that like, I think is like the premise of how I talk about things with people, right? It's like advocating. You have to be your own advocate, your own financial advocate, your own health advocate, your own marketing advocate. And that's why I always tell people, like, you got to know a little bit about this stuff. You can't just say, hey, can you do this for me? Because your CPA, although he loves you, is probably only spending 10 minutes on your work because he has 300 other clients as well. Right. So you just like, let me ask my CPA's got my back. No, he does not.
Yeah. And your medical doctor definitely doesn't either, by the way.
Your medical doctor sure as shit doesn't have one, especially the one that's probably in your plan, because they are overwhelmed.
Well, no, even the one at this fancy healthcare facility doesn't.
Well, yes, because that is a business. That whole thing has been branded,
well, it's a
executive
reimbursement
physical
model. So unfortunately, prevention is not reimbursable. Disease is reimbursable.
Dwight, what are you smirking at?
I'm laughing because what's sad about this is that we are in the medical profession and this is how we feel about medicine. Imagine the rest of society who's completely oblivious.
Shit, Dwight. I don't think
it's just so insane. No, what I'm saying is the fact that we're upset about how reactionary medicine is. And at the same time, which is true. I don't
think I was ever upset. And I think there is the distinction. You can spend time being upset or you can spend time taking action on behalf of yourself. Right. And just
I agree, but like FYI, I've had 3 functional medicine doctors that I've graduated out of.
Oh my
God,
I've been like, no way.
Okay, what? And so it's all there. It's not necessarily good, and so you get to the point where you're like, okay, we got to keep getting to the point that you get something better, but you have to be your own advocate, is what you're saying. But you have to understand, general society just thinks I live in the United States, I have good healthcare. That's what general society thinks.
Totally.
Well, you also there's a bias. You want to hear good news.
It's not healthcare.
So you want to hear good news. So you go to your doctor. You feel good about going to your doctor, even your shitty local doctor. And he looks at your test. You're all good. You're fine. Nothing going on.
See you in a year.
You're great. And then you feel good. You don't want to say well, how good am I? You don't want to get the bad news. So listen, it's really important. And I'm just.
Or how good should I be at my age?
Right.
With my genetic profile, like where should I be? And those are the things that are not being proactive.
Well, I think the best way to look at healthcare, and this is something that I talked to the doctor about. He asked me something. He's like, what do you want to do when you're 85? Do you want to be able to go to Europe and walk all day? Or is that something you think about? Because it's our patients. Some of our patients have told us in our past, I'm 50 years old. My father wore dentures. My grandfather wore dentures. I'm planning on getting dentures, rip all my teeth out. And then other people are like, I'm 50, I'm going to live till 85. I expect to keep my teeth a lifetime. So it's really important to ask your patient, do you expect to keep your teeth a lifetime? And if so, you can't just show up once every 10 years for cleanings. So it's also important, what do you want to do when you're 80? Do you want to play with your kids? Do you want to walk 3 miles, 4 miles a day? Is that something you want? Because if you want to be 80 walking 4 miles, what do you need to be at 50? What do you need to be at 60? It doesn't get better.
So I just want to go, we'll loop this in and we'll end on the whole thing. I think, Craig, I told you this, and Dwight, you'll appreciate what I did from a large language model, right? So I have all this stuff. I love tests, love get tests and get this and data for stuff. even though I have a concierge doctor, I uploaded it all into a custom LLM. And then I take Peter Attia's book, Craig. I don't know if I told you this. I took that in as well, and I cross-reference it. So I have all my testing, and then I have Peter Attia's book, and I say, hey, tell me what I need to do here.
Can I get that LLM
so I have my
too?
own like medical AI.
Can you really share that with me?
Well, it's only for me because it's my test, but I can share you how you do it.
Yeah, I'd love
and this
to have
is something pervasive. Like, so Elon announced, and you guys probably saw this, where he said that Grok does medical diagnosis testing. Sorry, I'm getting too excited. Grok can interpret medical X-rays and medical images. And so this lady wrote this huge story. And so her daughter was complaining about her wrist, and they went to the urgent care, and it was like, nope, it's just a bruise, like go back. Meanwhile, there's swelling, and the daughter's got a fever and all these things, and like starting to get the wrist is starting to become immobilized. She then goes to her orthopedic, and this is just an outlying example, right? I'm not throwing shade to anyone. It was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong. Well, she takes the x-rays, uploads them to Grok, and it's like, hey, there is a break, and here it is, Grok. And by the way, this is really, it's right there at the head. I don't know what the head, humerus head, would that be it's right there at the head of it. And how would someone have missed this kind of thing? At which chance she was able to go back, and they were like, oh yeah, you're right. So like she advocated on behalf of her child and used technology for that. You can Google this story. It's woman claims that Elon's Grok saved her daughter's fracture after doctor fails to diagnose it. So you can read this story. It's quite fascinating. But like that is the future. And that's what I was talking about from if you live as a diagnostician, I would be worried. If I used my brain to make money and only my brain, I would be worried.
Yep.
And that's just me. I would love for someone to come back and be like, you're an idiot. You're an idiot, dude. Okay. Well, show me where I'm an idiot. So,
speaking of, it would be the radius and the ulna, not the humerus. But
okay.
Yes,
well, I guess the humerus and the leg, but no, hey, I knew I was actually thinking, I was like, that sounds like a leg, but like you two boys did not jump on and correct me like I'm a big dummy. So I will take the big dummy card.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
This is why we would rely on AI to know that.
Right. Well, that is another fear, right? Becoming so reliant that you stop using your brain. Anyway, boys, we're at an hour 7. A lot of stuff there. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Don't forget, I know we plugged the BP Health, but also don't forget about the summit. We're going to Ritz-Carlton, August 8th and 9th. Dwight, are you speaking?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Dwight's speaking.
Yeah. So you can get
worth your price of tuition just for that, if I may say so.
That's it. I mean, I kind of agree with that.
That's very, very generous.
August 8th and 9th, Orlando, bring the kids, get a Ritz-Carlton room night for $170.
That's crazy. That's sub 200. That's crazy.
$179.
That's crazy.
And there's a water park attached
just for the bottled water.
Well, we won't make that mistake again, Dwight. The win when they brought out pallets full of water, it's like, hey, give them to your guests. Like, cool. And by the way,
$12 a piece. $19 a piece. Yeah. The win always wins.
The win always wins. All right, guys, that was fun. And we'll see y'all next time.
See you guys.
So good.